Welcome back. First of all, Ted Cruz is the winner in Maine and Kansas now, keeping score. Bernie Sanders is the winner of the Democratic caucuses in Kansas. So we have 3 results so far. Polls are about to close any minute now in Louisiana and Nebraska, and we'll have a characterization of those both. Get back to you, Lawrence. Your thought about the governor of Maine.
The governor of Maine, Paul LePage, who's a wildly controversial figure, when he endorsed Donald Trump, there was a lot of speculation in Maine. Does this help or hurt?
Tell me about LePage. What are his worst hits?
Oh, man, it goes on and on. There's got to be a video reel here somewhere with just all the strangest comments you could ask for, and you know, including racially insensitive comments. And it's been, you know, years of this, and that's why this question came up. You know, this guy is as loose a cannon as Donald Trump, endorsing Donald Trump, and there's no evidence tonight that helped.
Well, we're 30 seconds away from perhaps big news. By the way, did you ever see a Republican announcement of who won a caucus underwritten by the builders and the retailers? Is that why they stretched so long and played it out so long, county by county?
These are 15 minutes, right?
I thought that was amazing. This information paid for by, let's talk about elections being bought. Anyway. The polls are closing now. It's 9 o'clock in the East, and the polls are closed in Louisiana tonight. We have our first characterization of the races there. In the Democratic primary down there, the race is too early to call, and the Republican side, NBC, is characterizing the race as too early to call. In Nebraska, where caucus doors are shut now, the Democratic caucus there are also too early to call. So Nebraska, too early to call for the Democrats, and for both parties, the primary down in Louisiana. We're all looking forward to Louisiana because it's an actual primary. It means a lot of people voting, a lot of people. I look at Steve Kornacki now. He's looking with great anticipation. Go ahead, Steve.
Well, and Chris, this is a new experience for us this election season. This is the first time we've had results coming in with no exit polls. So the polls are closing in Louisiana. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way. We're going to see where those votes are coming in from. We're going to see. We're going to match them up against our expectations. But what are our expectations? I can tell you, this was the poll. This is the last poll before they voted in Louisiana. You see, Trump had a double-digit lead over Cruz. I think, look, the next couple hours are going to be pretty dramatic here because they're going to tell us a lot about the story that comes out of tonight. We know already this has been a good night for Ted Cruz, but will this be a great night for Ted Cruz? If Ted Cruz can pull the upset here, if he can overperform in Louisiana, as we've seen him overperform in Kansas and in Maine, this could be a great night for him. Also, if Donald Trump can't win here, if he ends up losing 3 states, and then we still have Kentucky on the board, he's leading there right now, but if he loses 3 states, that's trouble for him. But then the other thing, too, is Marco Rubio. This is already a bad night for him, and this could get worse. And why? Again, this is the poll. Again, these aren't results, but he came in today at 11% in Louisiana, and we just talked about this before. You can pick up some delegates in the congressional districts, but he's going to need to hit 20% to get delegates statewide in Louisiana. This is the biggest contest on the board today. This in Kentucky in terms of delegates. He may get shut out again if he doesn't hit 20% here, so that's another thing to be keeping an eye on.
Kasich, a player down there, not in the polling, right?
It doesn't look that way, no.
And so we have fascinating stuff. And again, let's remind the voters who are joining us right now, the viewers, that this is a closed primary down there, as we've had closed caucuses throughout the evening, meaning only registered Republicans.
Right, and so we've seen now, look, Kentucky, we have 4 closed contests on the board today. The line that you were hearing, particularly from the Cruz campaign after Super Tuesday, was the real trouble for Donald Trump after Super Tuesday is you're going to have a lot more closed contests in states. And when you take independents, you take Democrats out of the mix, he doesn't do nearly as well. Now, you look at Kansas tonight, for that matter, you look at Maine tonight, and you say, maybe there's something to that. Then again, as we say, Kentucky is going on right now. It's being counted up. He is leading in Kentucky right now. That's also a closed contest, and on top of that, it's not just closed, it's also a caucus. The 2 things he's supposed to struggle the most with are caucuses, you know, a more intense partisan turnout there, and closed contests. So if he can win a closed caucus in Kentucky, that would go a long way to for Trump to be able to say to that criticism, you know what, I can win when it's just hardcore Republicans. And again, if he could pull off Louisiana townight too, then I think we'd look at this and say it was a pretty good night for Ted Cruz, and it was a pretty good night for Donald Trump, if he can win both of those states.
Let me ask you one last. How's this pattern hold of closed caucuses when we go to the big states, Michigan, Illinois, and Florida in the next 10 days?
Yeah, again, we're looking at a number of closed, we're going to majority closed over the next, I think it is the next 20 contests.
We got it. Sanders has just won apparently the caucuses in Nebraska. Bernie Sanders has won again tonight, having won in Kansas the Kansas-Nebraska Act. He's won both of those. Let's go to Lawrence on that. There he is, making history in the middle of the country.
Yeah, and keeping this thing going. You know, there's at this point in the campaign, I have to say, all these candidates worked awfully hard to get to here, and I am the least eager among us to say this one should drop out or this one, it's done, it's all over, it's hopeless, forget about it. I don't know how to strategize which one of them has the best way to try to knock down Donald Trump, for example, on the Republican side, and Bernie Sanders has more than earned his right to stay in this thing, and tonight he has a stronger argument for doing so.
It seems to me tonight it's the people that are contesting the front-runner status who are winning tonight. The front-runners are not winning yet tonight.
Well, what it says to me is that the voters out there aren't ready to give up the ghost to the people who are in the lead, and they want the fight to continue. They want their arguments to be made. They want their arguments to be heard. And you have in both Bernie Sanders and Ted Cruz vehicles that can make a good argument. These are candidates who have a solid message, one on the progressive side for Bernie, one on the conservative side for Ted Cruz, and the voters are saying very clearly, we're not done yet. There's more fight in this, and we may take this to the convention. Now, I don't know how many delegates Bernie will have going into Philly, but at least it guarantees him, as Lawrence said, an opportunity to compress the case all the way through.
But one huge difference is there's no one on the Democratic side who's saying, gee, I just can't imagine how the party will find a way to unite around the front runner. Like, no one's having that discussion on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, they've got this front runner, and everything about the discussion of the campaign is, how do we survive this front runner? How do we dethrone the front runner? What do we do?
Well, because you know how the Democrats will resolve it on the platform. Right?
They could resolve it with the vice presidential choice, too.
Do you think somebody on the harder left than Hillary?
Elizabeth Warren's available.
Hillary and Elizabeth.
Why not?
Okay, that's a thoughtful.
Why not double down on history?
Dynamic ticket.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, you know, I think
I was thinking more
we'll
Joe
muse on
Manchin
that one for a
myself
little
to
bit.
balance it the other way.
Yeah, we'll muse on that one for a little bit. That's a pretty interesting pairing. But I think, though, on the right, the question about, you know, will you support the nominee if it's Donald Trump was settled at the debate the other night. When you had, after Mitt Romney pressed the case not to support Donald Trump, all three remaining candidates for the presidency on the Republican side, other than Trump, said they'll support him. So,
can I just say, I don't think on the Republican side with Donald Trump that anything can ever be settled, simply because on the Saturday before the convention, he can say something so wildly insane that someone who said I was going to support him then says, oh, I can't support him now. You know, I mean, and you know that neither Bernie Sanders nor Hillary Clinton has that capacity. They are practiced politicians. It's not going to happen. In fact, that's true of all the rest of them. Trump is the guy who can take down Trump at any moment with his next
But that's what
insanity.
people like about him. He's not the practiced politician, and that's what a lot of his energy is about.
Personally, I think everything you've said is right. I think Trump does have a potential, if he starts talking about infrastructure and surprises everybody with a positive campaign of building, not bridges, but I'm sorry, not walls, but bridges, and starts talking about how building works, how you do put the materials together, how you do make it work financially, how you do infrastructure, and how it pays itself back. The public needs to hear that message. He could be the one to deliver. And ironically, which is if you put $30 trillion, a friend of mine said you put $30 trillion down with low interest rates, it'll pay itself back.
Oh, yeah. It always has.
It's a smart move. Most of what we live on, subways and highways and bridges, we all lived on our lives, were built before we got here. And they've all paid themselves out. And yet we have lost the guts.
I'm surprised he hasn't made that argument.
I don't know why he hasn't said, I put up the buildings. He may not like my language, but look, I can put up a building. I know how to do it.
Yeah, so I can, you know, in the process of making America great again, we're going to rebuild America infrastructurally. I think he can make that argument.
David Garth, the great...
He's got a party that's against that.
Well, that's something. Well, you know, this Ford is Bloomberg and Eddie Rendell and a few other people. By the way, David Garth, you know him, the great New York political consultant on the Democratic side, replaced the smell of decay with the smell of construction. And we know what that smell is. It's dirt being moved. It's stuff going up. People like it. Here's where we stand right now. For the Democrats tonight, Bernie Sanders is the winner in the Nebraska caucus. He's also the winner of the caucuses in Kansas. So Kansas, Nebraska for Bernie, middle of the country. The Democratic primary in Louisiana is too early to call, and we'll get more as we go on tonight. It's developing. Bernie's doing well. A lot of people are going to like that. Cruz is going to do well tonight, but we still don't know about Kentucky.